Hi guys, George here again at Optics Warehouse, and today just going to do a quick video on how to choose a monocular. The first thing you've got to define is your budget. Basically from the £800 and up mark, that's where you get your serious thermal tools that you can use for your foxing, surveying, whatever it is. Below that, you can have some things that are usable maybe for some like light ratting or some light spotting stuff, or even more towards the security side of things, but you're edging onto thermal as a gimmick. So after you've defined your budget, then we need to break down some specs, what they mean and what they mean to you guys choosing a thermal. I don't think this is the most important spec, but it'll be the one that you probably see first, and that will be the millimeter of the lens. Now, most people, when they hear that, this is a Condor 35, they think it means it's 35mm wide. It is not the objective diameter of the scope that they're referring to. It's actually the focal length that they're referring to. It does dictate how wide that lens is, but the main thing to consider with it is your base magnification. Basically, the larger the number, 35 versus 50, the larger your base mag. So for example, this is the CQ35, there's the CQ50. There is no difference in performance, it is your field of view magnification. So when you were choosing between the two, you've got to think, am I doing a lot more close-up work? Am I doing woodland stalking, that sort of thing? Or am I doing open field, big wide areas where the bit of zoom really helps the identification? That's where the sort of choice comes in. Moving on from that, the second most, or to my mind, the most important spec is the net D rating. You'll see this written in the titles. It'll either be as net D, sub symbol, 25, 20, whatever it is, MK, or it'll be less than symbol, number, MK. MK stands for millikelvin. It's just the unit of measurement they use for determining net D. Basically, it's how sensitive that unit is, and you want that number to be as small as possible. Something like this. Condor is a sub 15 millikelvin, which is what the top end units are really running at now. What it means is on your picture, if you had a sub 40 millikelvin and a fox at 100 yards, it's going to appear as a bright white silhouette of a fox. Increasing that millikelvin, decreasing the millikelvin to a lower number, means you're going to add texture to that fox. You're going to start seeing temperature difference between, through say the neck, the tail, under the arms, that sort of stuff. It just aids in your identification and makes you so much more confident. The second important thing with it is being more sensitive, being able to detect lower temperature differences, is if what you're trying to detect is obscured, whether it be foliage, bushes, trees, whatever, it can pick up on those smaller heat sources far more easily, so you can get an idea of where things are. The next thing to consider, this is really more, especially if you're at that more entry level to thermal, if you're looking under the £800 mark, is does it have an image focus? So most units here, this is a Lumi from Notpix, have a front focus like so you can get the image nice and sharp. The Pulsar here and even the Condor have moved on to one-handed operation with a dial back here. Some units don't, and they don't necessarily state this, so it's either something you need to ask or just look through the pictures and see if you can find one. Basically having the focus lets you take advantage of what's there so much more than when you don't have it, and I don't know why more manufacturers make lower spec ones with a focus. That's the main reason I say that you get a usable tool from 850 up, because that's where you can pretty much guarantee it's got a focus of some kind and you can really use that image. So that's the three most important things to consider to my mind. Moving on from there, this is more now just personal preference stuff. Really, it's not a make or break to my mind, but things to consider before you buy. So one thing that I think gets overlooked is batteries. Pulsar, for example, they use all proprietary batteries. The benefits of this is you get great battery life out of their units, you get really good reliability. I don't think I've seen a Pulsar battery fail before. The downside potentially is you're tied into a proprietary battery, they're typically more expensive, and it also means that if they do consider discontinuing that unit, you don't get access to replacements. That being said, Pulsar themselves are usually very good at supporting discontinued stuff. Something like, say, the HIC or the NotPix, they'll use a non-proprietary battery. So this one here uses a 21700, or the other most common one is an 18650. Differences between them is one's just bigger than the other, gives longer battery life, but they're non-proprietary, so it means, yes, they're less regulated. If you're buying non-branded ones, you may be getting a lesser item, but they're typically a lot cheaper. You know, you can get batteries at well under £10 with chargers in some cases, and it means you're always going to have access to a battery. So if a battery ever failed on one of these, you can just toss it and you replace it really easily, even if HIC Micro themselves or NotPix went bust. So that's something to consider. The next thing, I think, and this is really just a subjective thing, and that's the screen that's in the rear that you're actually viewing through. The reason that is just complete subjective is it's all down to how your eye interprets it, really. For example, I really like what HIC have been doing with their screens. I think it makes the image really easy to read, especially now they've gone to something a bit bigger. But I also know plenty of people who will swear by the Pulsar way of doing things that hits their eye better. It's a bit like with a day scope and how glass, you know, it could be objectively the best glass in the world, but if it's no good for your eye, it's no good. So it's one of those things where, yes, watching lots of YouTube videos is good for thermal and deciding between them, but ideally you want to be able to go have a look through them. After that, really it's just other features that you might want. All three units here in front of us, they all have LRF functions, so you can range find. Not everybody wants that. Other things to consider are form factor. These are all what I call the camcorder shape. Yeah, they're all square, boxy, and I find that far better and far more intuitive. Other people like, say, the HIC Micro Falcons or the NotPix Aces, Vistas, which are squarer or more elongated, or even the old Pulsar Helions and things like that. I suppose as a caveat to that, or an aside, weight and size also come into that as a consideration. But I hope that's covered a lot of bases. If I haven't covered anything and you desperately want to know, comment it down below or get in contact, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.